So it's another year, and it's easy for us to think that this corona pandemic won't ever stop, with new variants coming all the time. Every week you hear that it's a new variant there, countries are locking down here, and all different type of things in the news about this pandemic. And it would be very easy for us to think that there won't be an end for this. And it's very long, it's been going on for some time now. But I'm here to tell you that there are some pandemics that even went further and more harsh than the corona pandemic.
September we met, I can tell by your smile.
And of this video was sponsored by Nature's Healing. So if you know me, you know that I love a woman with a clean. But only one thing I love more than a woman with a clean, and that's two women with a clean. And while that would seem like such a dream for most men, it's no dream for Nature's Healing to give and provide women with all natural products to use for their feminine parts, as well as their special line of deodorants that are also all natural. They have pads, they have cleansers, they have steamers, they have kitty washes, they got so many things. So for you to actually be that woman with a clean, please go over to Nature's Healing and follow them on Instagram. Tell them I sent you, Concept of the Mind, and just follow them and share it just the same and purchase a few products. Remember to tell them that I sent you. So a big thanks to Nature's Healing for sponsoring that portion of this video. What's up, Concept Gang? I know it's been a while since you've seen a video from the channel, but I promise you that I will be continuously posting now, and to keep you posted with all the content that kept you here in the first place. So if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing after you watch this video, share it to your friends, and go and check me out on Instagram. It's at Concept of the Mind. So without further delay, let's get into it. So as stated in the intro for this video, there has been past diseases and sicknesses that has plagued the world and caused a pandemic. So I'll be explaining to you some of these pandemics that happened before and how long and the toll that it took on humankind. So for years, scientists and medical researchers have differed on what exactly is a pandemic or an epidemic. But for one thing everyone agrees on is that the word describes a widespread of disease across a region or a geographical area. So we're kicking the list off with a big one. And this one is the HIV/AIDS pandemic in its peak from 2005 to 2012 and still going on. So first identified in the Democratic Republic of Congo in 1976. HIV/AIDS has truly proven itself as a global pandemic, killing over 36 million people since 1981. There are currently 31 to 35 million people living with HIV/AIDS. The vast majority of these people are sub-Saharan African, and where 5% of the population is infected, roughly 21 million people is still living with it. Awareness has grown over time for persons to understand what HIV/AIDS is and how they can actually protect themselves. But globally, the death toll is over 2.2 million, where it has dropped. So I think that most persons would understand what it is now for we to only have that amount per year. Next up on the list is something that I know would probably shock people, and it's the flu pandemic. In modern times, it would seem as if catching the common cold or the common flu would be something that you can easily overcome. But before technological advancements, this was something that was a major killer back in the days. So in 1968, a category 2 flu pandemic was rising in Hong Kong. It was called the Hong Kong flu. This was caused by the H3N2 strain of the influenza A virus, a genetic offshoot of the H2N2 subtype. From the first reported case on July 13 in 1968 in Hong Kong, it only took 17 days before outbreaks of the virus were reported in Singapore, Vietnam, and within 3 more months, they had signs of spread to the Philippines, India, Australia, Europe, and the United States of America. While the 1968 pandemic was only comparatively low at 5.01% of what the flu was actually based on, it resulted in the death toll of over 1 million people, including 500,000 residents of Hong Kong, approximately 15% of the population at that time. Next up on the list is the cholera pandemic, which lasted from around 1852 to the 1860s. So this cholera pandemic, to be more specific, the third cholera pandemic was generally considered the most deadly of the 7 cholera pandemics. The third major outbreak of cholera in the 19th century lasted from 1852 to around the 1860s, as I said before. So like the first and second pandemics, the third cholera pandemic was originated in India, spreading through the Ganges River Delta before tearing through Asia, Europe, America, and Africa, and ending lives in over 1 million people. A British physician, John Snow, while working in a poor area of London, tracked the cases of cholera and eventually succeeded in identifying that it was a means of contaminated water which has brought the transmissions. So imagine that just by drinking water you could have caught cholera back in those days. Unfortunately, at the same year of his discovery, in 1854, it went down as the worst year in Britain because over 23,000 people lost their lives at that time based on cholera. Next on the list is the Philadelphian yellow fever. What we must understand is a lot of these pandemics took place in around the time of slavery or around the time of Christ or even before Christ. In 1793, when yellow fever seized Philadelphia, the United States capital at the time, officials wrongly believed that slaves were immune, and as a result, abolitionists called for the people of African origin to be recruited to nurse the sick. The disease is carried and transmitted by mosquitoes, which experienced a population boom during this time where the summers were particularly hot and humid. Philadelphia wasn't safe until around the time of winter when the mosquitoes died out, but the pandemic finally stopped. By then, more than 5,000 people had died. Another pandemic which made its way through history and to come on this list is the American plagues. So in the 16th centuries, there was a lot of travel and a lot of slave trade going on. So it wasn't uncommon for persons from Europe to be traveling to Africa, and from Africa to America, and from America to the Caribbean. So in America, the plagues were a cluster of Eurasian disease brought to the Americas by European explorers. One of these illnesses included smallpox, contributing to the collapse of the Inca and the Aztec civilization. Some estimates suggest that 90% of indigenous people in the Western Hemisphere was killed from this disease. The disease helped the Spanish force led by Hernan Cortez to conquer the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan in 1519. Another Spanish force led by Francisco Pizarro conquered the Incas in 1532. The Spanish took over the territories of both of the empires that I just mentioned. The Aztec and Incan armies had been ravaged by disease and were unable to withstand the Spanish forces. When people from Britain, France, Portugal, and the Netherlands began exploring, conquering, and settling in the Western Hemisphere, they were helped by the fact that disease had vastly reduced the size of the indigenous groups that were opposed to them. And finally on the list, the mother of all pandemics. This was called the Black Death Plague. It has gone down in history as this is the biggest and most long plague. This plague took place from 1346 to 1353. An outbreak of the plague ravaged through Europe, Africa, and Asia with an estimated death toll of between 75 and 200 million people. Thought to have originated in Asia, the plague most likely jumped through continent to continent by the use of fleas. These fleas were living in the merchant ship docks and always have been taking place to go on ships which move from country to country. Ports, being major urban centers at the time, were the perfect breeding ground of rats and fleas, and thus the insidious bacterium flourished and devastated 3 continents in its wake. I don't know about you, but I could use 200 million subscribers right now. If you're still watching, click the subscription bell and share this with your friend. So here we are at the end of another video once again. I hope you guys learned something from this, and if you did, you can leave a comment, tell me what you learned, and you can also share this with your friends, families, and everyone you also know. So until we meet again, stay safe, wear a mask, sanitize, and get vaccinated if you so choose to do so. This was Concept of the Mind.